So in terms of finding R, the correlation coefficient, you can use technology. Most calculators and software programs can calculate R for you. We're going to be doing it by hand, and we're going to be doing this formula that's probably scaring you. But keep in mind, even though it looks so bad, it's not bad at all. We're going to set up a table, and it's going to turn out each of these values, which I'll explain in detail in a minute, are just a piece out of the table, and it's pretty easy to solve. So let's start breaking down the formula. Here it is listed, and I'm going to go over it in detail. So the first thing you'll notice in the formula is n. N is the count of the numbers. And then sigma, which remember, sigma means to add. But before we go to add that first n, I want to make sure you use the correct n. A lot of people get that wrong. So we're always going to be given x and y, our data values, and so I put them in orangish so you can see them here. The thing you need to recognize, maybe this was income and number of cats or whatever it is you're studying, that there was one x and we're seeing if a y is connected. There was a second x and we're seeing if there's a y connected to it. And there's a third x that we're seeing if there's a y connected. So n equals 3, not 6. There are 3 parts to the data, and this meant wow, not factorial, but a lot of people see 6 numbers and think that n is 6, but this n is actually going to be 3. The next thing you see in the formula is the parentheses sum of xy. So when you see sum of xy, what that means is first you multiply the x's and y's, then you add those total. So we're going to take this x and y and we're going to multiply them. So 2 times 2 is 2, etc. 4 times 3 is 12. X is 7, y is 5. We're going to multiply those and get 35. Now that we've multiplied those, these are the numbers we add. We sum the 2, 12, and 35 to get 49. So n is multiplied by the sum of xy, and so 3 is multiplied by the 49. Then we subtract the sum of x. So when you see the sum of x, it means just come over here and add the x column to get 13, and so 13 goes after the minus sign. And that is multiplied with the sum of y, which is the same process. I'm going to add up all my y's to get 9, and so I'll be multiplying 13 with 9. In the denominator, inside my square root is n. It's the exact same n we had before. So if we had 3 before, we still have 3 for n. But now I need to multiply by the sum of x squared. So when you see the sum of x squared, first thing you do is square the x's. Once all the x's are squared, you add those squared numbers. So I made a new column. I took 2 and squared it to get 4. And I keep following that process. I took x is 4, squared it to get 16, x is 7, squared it to get 49. Then I added up the squared numbers. 4 plus 16 plus 49 is 69. So inside my square root, multiplied by the 3, is 69. Then we subtract the sum of x quantity squared. Notice this is different. In this case, first thing you do is add up the x's, and then you only square once. You square their total. So we've already added up the x's to get 13. So in my formula, the 13 will be squared. And then the same kind of process happens with the y's, that you'll be squaring y's and totaling them to get 35, or you'll be taking the sum of y's, which is 9, and squaring that. In terms of solving this, ultimately we should be getting 0.9933, which is a pretty strong positive linear correlation, but on your calculator, I know all these numbers can look pretty scary. I found through teaching of years of this that really if you do the top, which is one line on your calculator, 3 times 49 minus 13 times 9, and get 30 and write that down, pretty easy. Your first square root in the denominator, you should just be able to type the square root of, and then don't use parentheses even though they're in the picture, 3 times 69 minus 13 squared. Actually, and don't even do the square root, I'm sorry, you just do the inside and you should get 38. Same thing for your second square root. Don't hit a square root button, just type 3 times 35 minus 9 squared and you should get 24. So then, before you take the square root, multiply 38 and 24 to get 912. So the only hard part you're really entering in your calculator is 30 divided by the square root of 912. You'll get the correct answer, and you didn't have to kill yourself trying to type that crazy thing in.